Welcome back to another D-Rich Bible Minute. This particular minute, or next few minutes, will be used to discuss a term of mine. I don't know if I've heard it before or not, but it's a term that I use quite a bit in the forums, and I used it in the last Bible Minute actually, so I thought it deserved a minute to be explained. Basically, it's the term is scrapbook theology. It's a basic term I use to describe those who try and speak using the Bible where the Bible is normally silent, meaning that they will take several different verse fragments, which is different than taking a verse, but taking several different verse fragments out of a Bible, meaning, say a verse contains 2 or 3 sentences, and they'll take the first sentence out of one verse, second sentence out of another verse, maybe a 4th or 5th sentence out of a 3rd verse, compile those 3 sentences so that it reads something completely different or completely new. The idea is used oftentimes to create new doctrine, to justify people's beliefs, or to support some weird or crazy thing that wasn't a part of original first century worship, or how the Bible canon was intended to be interpreted. Now, not all scrapbook theology is bad. If you could actually take full verses, several full verses, and compile them together, and at that point the verses don't necessarily contradict, they're not taken out of context. If none of those things are a problem, then these verses can be used together to underscore a broader point. But the point is going to be made contextually, maybe once or twice. A good example of this is where I've taken the idea where Satan runs the world. Okay, and I've got probably 6 different verses that all underscore this meaning, but each individual verse would stand on its own by itself, but it's a 1 or 2 sentence mentioning of Satan running the earth. It's more of a matter of fact. But if you take like 12 of these matter of fact mentionings, then the idea is, it's been mentioned and then underscored 11 more times. So that gives you more strength when you go and provide book, chapter, and verse on several different mentionings, which is completely different because, like I said, each one of those verses stands alone on its own. It's not an in-depth discussion. Versus scrapbook theology, where people have taken, again, just sentence fragments and compiled them together, and that does happen more often than not. The only problem with the major problem with scrapbook theology is when people try and use verse fragments to try and teach a principle that an entire block or paragraph or even chapter is dedicated to. They'll try and use like 10 different verse fragments to try and overthrow something like mentioned in or how sin is framed out in Romans 6. They'll use 10 different little verses to try and that's not a really good use. It's more of a throwaway use at that point. You almost want to run from people who try and use verse fragments to try and overthrow or dismiss larger principles. So, scrapbook theology, something to think about.